Yeah.
So Sujata, welcome. I'm delighted that you're joining us. And, the purpose of this was we at the Arts Quotient are quite focused on enabling women leaders, not just to be successful in their jobs immediately, but also take a much longer view of being able to build fulfilling careers and fulfilling lives. And so this March, we are really looking at some important habits, mindsets that they need to build towards that long-term goal. And you've done a lot of work on this area. I mean, I remember from your research at the National Institute of Health in DC, you've written so long and prolifically on this subject, on sort of wellness more broadly. Your book, 99 Not Out, and also more recently, you've done a lot of work on pivoting into mental well-being. So we're delighted to have you to bring all of your experience and perspectives. And I want to jump right into it.
Yes.
And I want to ask you, that often in this paradigm of leadership, right, which is almost military, right, work intensely. I mean, right now we're talking about 80 hours weeks as a threshold to be successful. I mean, how do women even begin to think about wellness? I mean, is it even important early in your career?
Right. I think wellness is something that you have to consider as intrinsic to your life as you do breathing. And it's incredibly crucial, right? And it goes back to the point we were making earlier about how, because wellness is not on the forefront of women's sort of imagination, the points in their lives when wellness naturally gets compromised becomes something that just hits them, blindsides them. It doesn't have to, right? But for that, we need to have certain structural sort of scaffolding in place, and that's what's missing. So it's not. I don't think it's an individual can only do so much for their own wellness. I think institutions have to understand that they need to play a role, and that often gets sort of subsumed in these wellness programs, right? It becomes up to the individual, and often the solution really lies with organizations. But to go back to wellness and how is it defined? You hear the word being thrown around a lot. So to quickly get into it, the WHO says wellness is not just the absence of disease or infirmity, but it's really the presence of physical, mental, emotional well-being. And something that we working women are constantly struggling with, right? Feeling that sense of wellness on a regular basis. But that doesn't mean that we can't strive for it, or we certainly can't feel better, right? And there is this sense that it's only going to be accessible to the few who have perhaps the financial resources. And again, it's really not about that.
Like
It's
a
not
luxury.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be considered a luxury. It can be something that you look at as an approach to living. So it's a positive approach to your life, right? How can you make your life worth living consistently? And that really means looking at your physical wellness, which is really the foundation of everything. So when we talk about physical wellness, we're saying movement, exercise, nutrition, good food, and sleep. So these are really the three pillars of physical wellness, and you can't get away from it. I know it's all very banal and everybody's heard it before, but it's really critical and becomes even more important in the menopausal years. I mean, to stay functional during that time, having a real deep focus on all these three becomes critical, which is why starting young is important. If they become habits, that isn't something you need to think about. It's just something you're doing, like you're brushing your teeth. If you're exercising 30 minutes to 60 minutes a day, every day, most days in your 20s and 30s and 40s, and in your 50s, you're just going to do it anyway. But if you're not, then to start off then, when you have teenage children and aging parents and a career that's finally reached a point that you're satisfied with, it becomes that much harder to inculcate. So that whole point about balanced diet, Swati, is always useful. I think a point that, again, in perimenopausal and menopausal women, that we tend to forget is the importance of protein. The reason that we're hungry all the time is because we're losing muscle mass, and the way to recoup that and to protect that is to increase the protein in your diet. That becomes incredibly important. There tend to be micronutrient deficits that women tend to have throughout their lifetimes: iron, B12, vitamin D, not just women, but particularly women, calcium as they get older, magnesium is a big one, right? It helps you sleep. I take it regularly now at night, and it's been a game changer for me sleep-wise. It's also been a game changer for recovery from working out. I used to be sore a lot. I mean, forever, right? Growing up, like 20s, 30s. And when I discovered magnesium, I found I wasn't that sore anymore. So, yeah, these are things that, unfortunately, doctors don't tell you. These are things that you don't hear about. But incredibly, incredibly important to your quality of life, right? Because then you're able to get to your life the next day. Yeah.
And something you said resonated with me, which is it feels banal because it feels like it's sleep, eat, move. But it may be simple. It's not easy to institute. And you use the analogy of brushing your teeth. And so tell me, from the women and others that you have coached, how do they manage to bring these aspects into their lives in a consistent and easy to adopt way?
Yeah. So it depends. It has to be, tailored. With coaching that's one-on-one, you can tailor it, right, to the person. You figure out what are the kinds of movements they enjoy. So some people enjoy dance, some people enjoy walking in their neighborhoods, and it's usually people who are starting off from nothing, that are coming to you with those goals in mind. For those who are already in the process of fitness, giving them something that excites them. So for some people, it's like running a marathon. And then that becomes the goal that we break into smaller goals. But finding something that excites you, finally, you have to want to do it. And I can give you the gyan on why it's important, but you're only going to do it if it's something that you feel like doing, right? And we do end up focusing on the feeling that you have post exercise, because we find that you feel really good post exercise. So I always remind my clients, when you're starting off, remind yourself of how you're going to feel after the hour. Because even for me, there are many days when I don't feel like, working out or going to the yoga class. But I remind myself of how good I'm going to feel afterwards and how my life that day is going to go afterwards. And that tends to sort of bring people back. So we use very standard sort of, motivational tools and ways of getting people to stay on track. And we use, they'll have to message me, for example, to say that they've done it. And that's a typical sort of one-on-one coaching exercise, right? But then the idea is really to get them into a habit. So if you do it for about 6 weeks consistently, the hope is, and at least for the next 6 months, you should be sorted with keeping it a habit. For me personally, what has worked with exercise is that feeling good after. That's what I sort of remind myself of, and I'm never disappointed. I always feel better, right? Particularly now as my joints are creaky. It just feels
like how you anchored it in finding movement in something that you enjoy doing, right? So it's not moving for its own sake, but also making it interesting for yourself, making it something that you can commit to with more ease. It's hard anyway, but doing that, or as you said, the positive aspects of it. So don't go into it thinking, people are often daunted at the idea of having to do it, or that I hate exercise. And and that you get over that is maybe anchor it to something you like, think about what comes later, and what you're building over time.
Yeah, because as kids, we didn't hate exercise. We all like to move. So what is it that you like? Maybe it was swimming, maybe it was biking, maybe it was dancing, maybe there was a class that you really enjoyed that you took with your friends. There's always something that you've enjoyed. Maybe it was a sport that you've sort of left and you want to get back to. It needs to be something that you enjoy, because then it'll be sustainable. Or if you're a goal-oriented person, then finding goals that's
setting that goalpost, and whether it's a marathon, something that you're training for that keeps you committed to the process.
But I never use weight loss as a goal. And so far, I think we've been fortunate that the clients I've worked with, we haven't needed to do that, right? Because sometimes obviously that's a need if it's a medical issue. but that sort of comes up as a by the way fun thing that happens, but it's not something that we focus on, because then that becomes stressful in itself, and the whole idea is to
People also think of exercise as a luxury or something you do because when you have the time. There's a very powerful article I read a few years ago called The Corporate Athlete, and I think it was written sometime in the early 2000s. And it essentially says that even to continue to have careers in the business world, you've got to think like an athlete. You're on all the time. So you have to build the rest. You have to build the muscles to be able to be effective and successful. And it actually has four things it tells you to work on. And one of them is physical. One of them is intellectual, which we do continue to do because we understand that's important to work. So if you don't have the stamina, you can't do the intellectual work. And the two other things that it talks about is building your emotional stamina as well as your spiritual stamina. Because that, that it's saying it's not, those are necessary for you to be successful in a professional context. And I want to hear a little more what you think about that.
100%. So as I said, physical wellness is sort of the foundation of it. You can't have the rest of it without that. But once you've got that piece sorted, or at least have started working on it, then the others to certainly be well aware of are the intellectual piece, which, like you said, if you're in business or working, you are by nature sort of working those muscles, so to speak. The emotional piece becomes, I think, incredibly important, as does the spiritual, because it often gets hidden, right? And emotional is sort of understanding, expressing, managing emotions effectively, right? Building a robust support system. This becomes very important for women, particularly. Practicing self-compassion, which is one of my favorites, right? It's not self-indulgence, nothing wrong with self-indulgence once in a while, but it's really about kindness, being kind to yourself like you would to those around you, to those you love, recognizing that we're all in the same, in the same storm, but in different boats. So we all have our own challenges, our unique challenges that come with being our unique sort of selves. And then engaging in activities in a very intentional way that bring us joy, right? So this is something we tend to again forget. We knew how to do it instinctively as children, but we tend to forget it as adults. And it could be something really simple. It doesn't have to be complex. It often isn't. And it could be combined with what else the other things that you do. So for me, spending time in nature brings me joy, and my morning walk gives me that, right? So here I'm getting my physical wellness, and I'm getting my piece of joy. It could be making something, and usually working with your hands immediately releases happy hormones in our brains. It's amazing how we are created, right? If we use our hands, if we use our legs, we're generally going to be happy. But modern life is such where we use neither, it seems, very much anymore. And so just creating makes us happy. It's not about the end product. It's just the act of using our hands. So gardening and, pottery and cooking for fun, not just cooking because you have to.
In your book, you actually talk about this, right? The mind-body connect and how that's vital to managing stress.
Yes.
And maybe creating with your hands just helps you process that anxiety, that stress that you're feeling. But tell me, what is the role that stress plays in undermining wellness for women, and how can we think about managing it beyond working with your hands? Not all of us have the opportunity to do that.
Sure. So when it comes to stress, it's something that we all know what it is. We're all experiencing it all the time. But the fact that it plays such an incredibly important role in undermining our health is something that we discount, because we almost take it for granted, right? We're all stressed. It's like pollution. Pollution is a form of stress as well for us. So actively finding ways in which you can de-stress or manage the stress in your lives better, learning to say no, learning to engage in wellness habits. So the stuff that counteracts stress is the stuff that we just talked about. So whether it's emotional wellness, working on emotional wellness, having a support group in the form of of friends that you connect with on a regular basis, or a club, a book club that you belong to. And this is all outside of work, but even
Always to
within,
find community. Yeah.
different ways of finding community. But I think, having employee resource groups where you have access to mentorship and access to support within your organization becomes incredibly important as a stress reliever, right? I think organizations need to structure their workplaces in a manner that help women reduce their stress, being able to ask for help. These are things that need to be incorporated in the way that girls are raised, in the way that women are mentored, in the way that we look at women. It should be expected that they ask for help. It should be expected that they're not super moms, super workers, super homemakers, super mothers, super daughters. And somehow we've sort of turned that on its head. So it's not a surprise for us to find out that Indian women are more stressed than the rest of the world by a few percentage points.
And that's just expectations you're saying. That's how they're
Yeah,
socialized.
because of the social expectations, right? The social expectations play a huge role in that. And then there's also the fact that when it comes to the actual sort of labor of keeping a home, women are the ones doing most of it. 87% of it most of the time. And while men are not, and they get away with it.
This is
And
often at a time when they're also building their careers. So it's doubled almost that challenge, right? Of raising young families, taking care of older family members, and trying to put in all these hours at work. So the stress is only amplified.
precisely. So in fact, the at SBI, they set up these guidelines where women could take 2 years off at any point of time in their careers, and their rise, their promotion would not be impacted. And this was, of course, a policy that was instated by a woman, right? So we need women in leadership.
I'm really curious to know how many. It's an incredible idea, and I'm so glad an organization's doing it. But I hope that women are taking it up, because I think women also feel intimidated by the idea of dropping out, because they feel that there's already so much stigma about it that they don't often avail of the facilities they have.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It would be interesting to know how many women are doing that, but it again comes down to that point, right? About the question that you sort of asked, and we walked around it earlier, and that's about women taking responsibility for their well-being, right?
Yeah.
Gently taking that responsibility and saying, my well-being matters, and not making it one of those things on the to-do list that just keep slipping off the list on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and then gets pushed to the next week. And
No,
somehow,
thank you for calling that out, Sujata, because I think sometimes you can, for all, it starts from there. It's from valuing your own wellness. It's asking for support. It's saying this matters. That can be the first seed to you creating that space to managing stress, to doing exercise, to valuing sleep. Often it begins just there. It's a mindset that needs to shift.
Yeah.
You are not the last priority.
No, and women need to realize, they did this, there was a study that came out in PNAS, and I made a note of it to discuss it with you, that they found in countries like India, which, ranks fairly low on the gender inequality, or rather fairly high on the gender inequality index, they found that women actually exhibit long-lasting changes in the way their brains have developed.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yeah. So that stress-induced conditions like PTSD and depression are conditions that they are more vulnerable to.
Oh,
So,
that's very sobering.
yeah. So we really do need to look after ourselves, right? It's not the actual brain changes that are happening because of, and it's not our faults per se. It's the way the society has sort of created this image of the perfect woman, the woman on the pedestal who's able to do all of these things, and we sort of fall for it, or we've gotten socially sort of programmed to think like those are the sort of the ideals that we have to aspire to. But I think women in leadership need to sort of talk about this more, because they clearly haven't followed that role model, right? They've clearly had women championing them. They've clearly had somebody at home looking after their children for them. So they need to sort of demystify what it means to be successful in
Yeah.
today's society, and talk about what it is that they do to support their health, and particularly I feel like menopause, gosh, it's just so important to talk about, but it needs to be done in a really in a very sensitive way, because it's all the stuff that we've fought for, right, to be taken seriously, to be expected to be sort of articulate and intelligent and capable, and then suddenly all of that seems to be taken away from us during those years, and so women don't want to talk about it, particularly
But
women
I'm
in.
so happy that you brought it up, because I think even when we started this conversation, we often think about the challenges that women have in younger in their careers, early in their careers, with all of this balance. But then
Yeah.
once you've built up this experience, these skills, you come into your mid 40s and later, and then go through another physical experience. And nobody is talking about this. So I want to ask you, what is, I know you've recently been working a lot on this, and tell us what you're finding and how women need to traverse this period of their lives.
Sure. No, so it's I think it becomes important that it get discussed, because the hard fought gains for women,
Yeah.
they traverse their careers, suddenly are in question, because they feel like they can't manage, they can't handle it all. And it would really help if women were to get the support they needed from their OBGYNs, in terms of HRT. HRT has gotten a really bad name, but it can be very, very useful depending on whatever else it is that your health profile looks like, HRT being, hormone replacement therapy. Um, but and that is, it's a game changer for most women. So just getting on HRT can get the brain fog out, can give you more energy, and can get back on sort of the horse of life, so to speak, without any other changes needed. But again, working on wellness, the foundations of wellness, physical, the emotional piece, the spiritual piece would be very useful. I think at the end of the day, if women were to just talk about it more, that would help. But there's stigma. In fact, I feel like there's even more stigma than there is for mental health, in terms of the silence that I have seen with menopause. And uh, menopause is more of a sort of an intellectual sort of interest to me. Right now, I'm working on mental resilience in teenagers, but it's a personal sort of interest, since I'm about to go through it, I'm sure, in the next couple of years. And I'm certainly in perimenopause, and it's startling to me. I mean, till I read all the data, I genuinely felt like I was losing my ability to be the person I used to be, and now I know it's just a phase.
And
And the
what that
more
does to your confidence, right? It just completely undermines.
100%, 100%, and this is a time when you are needed to perform your leadership roles at a
Indeed.
certain level, and you're needed to mentor people, and you're really supposed to be on the top of your game, and you really want to be, and you have been, and suddenly you're left wondering what's going on. So help is available with gynecologists. Help is available in terms of finding the right doctors, but you really do have to seek. It's not easy.
And
And
again, I want to call out that you need to go see a doctor. As all women should do a GP visit once a year after you're 35, do other tests, because not just around menopause, but so many other things. Even the thing that you talked about, like a vitamin D deficiency,
yes,
it's easy to fix, but you need to know, you need to map it. And so to build that habit of just do it around your birthday, do it once a year, but go
yeah,
see a doctor.
yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I do it around my wedding anniversary, because it's my husband who keeps giving me. So finally, he's like, "This is the gift you have to give me.
You
Go
have
and
to
get."
give yourself. I like that.
So, so I end up doing it. But yeah, no. And the vitamin D and the B12, right? So common, and it mirrors anxiety and it mirrors depression. So getting that sorted can play a huge role, and not just in the pure quality of your life, but the quality of your relationships, the quality of your marriage. So many marriages break up during the menopausal years. And I wonder what role menopause itself has to play in it,
Yeah.
uh, because it becomes women are incredibly vulnerable emotionally during those times. Some women, obviously, menopause is different from each and
Irritable as well.
irritable, and they need a ton of support.
Yeah.
And instead, they're the ones like that are holding everything together. It doesn't surprise me at all that that women feel the way they do, because they really do need a lot at that time. And we need men in this conversation. We need to pull men into this conversation to understand what is needed from them, children, teenagers or older children. But everyone needs to understand, just like they do when a woman is pregnant,
Yeah.
right? But it's very obvious,
Yeah,
when a
because it's obvious, because it's talked about. People know what to do and how to support. And I think what you're saying is you need to be calling it out, even when it's perimenopause and menopause, and seeking that support,
yeah.
getting it examined so you can address it medically, but also socially seeking support.
Yeah, and demystifying it, having those conversations around it, and recognizing that it's a phase, right?
Yeah, I
And
like that. Yeah.
great freedom, more peace, and so it's a transition point, and it can be far less traumatic on all fronts, because it can get to points, and it happens where women lose their marriages, they lose their jobs, and then they really, really struggle at a point in their lives where otherwise they would have been quite secure. They lose out on emotional security, financial security, and all because of this condition that they just haven't been able to address.
That is temporary. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sujata, I want to pivot a little bit. And in your practice, you've applied, and your research has been very much in a Western context of medicine. And yet
Right.
you have over time immersed also in Ayurveda and so many other practices. And can you touch upon a little bit this, holistic approach to women's wellness? And if there are any specific techniques that you found particularly helpful, both from Western medicine, but also otherwise?
Sure. So I do recommend ashwagandha as
Mhm.
something that women can use as de-stressor, because it sort of balances your emotional state, and it's something that you can take mid-morning, not in the afternoon, because it impacts your sleep, but take it mid-morning. It really does help you sort of stay more, even if you're going through a stressful episode. But the traditional sort of pranayam techniques, the traditional, yoga, practice of yoga and breathing, the basic pranayam, basic Surya Namaskars, just done regularly, consistently, can really help you with mood, can help you with um, internal internal organ functioning, whether it's your reproductive organs or your digestive organs. So again, it's all really very simple. None of
Yeah.
it is, all of you already know this. Nothing that I'm saying is sort of special or different, but it really does impact you if you're consistent with it. And the wonderful thing in India is that you have access. Yoga is something that we all have access to quite easily. Ayurveda, I wouldn't say the same, unfortunately, because it's so dependent on a
The
few
practitioner.
things, yeah, on the practitioner and the medication. So you need to make sure that both are kosher. But when it comes to yoga and breathing, I think we all know pranayam, we all know what to do. There's a wonderful breathing exercise that US Navy SEALs have developed based on pranayam. Surprise, surprise. And it's called box breathing.
Mm.
And essentially, what you're doing is you are inhaling, exhaling, and holding your breath for equal amounts of time. And that works really well to sort of reduce levels of anxiety, say before an acute experience. So before you're walking into an important meeting, or having that difficult conversation with your mother-in-law, or or with your husband, or with your teenager. My gosh, so many difficult conversations. So
Walk us
choose.
through how you do it.
Yeah, so it's really simple. You just sort of plant both your feet on the ground
Mhm.
and make sure that you're feeling settled in. Your spine should be sort of gently sort of placed, not terribly right, but comfortable, sort of like a yoga sort of sitting up position. And close your eyes and I'll count for you. You're basically going to be inhaling for the same amount of counts as exhaling and holding your breath for the same. So inhale, 1, 2, 3. Hold your breath, 1, 2, 3. Exhale, 1, 2, 3. Hold your breath, 1, 2, 3. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath, 1, 2, 3, 4. Last round, inhale, 1, 2, 3. Hold your breath, 1, 2, 3. Exhale, 1, 2, 3. And then whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you, Sujata. That's so powerful. I could literally feel myself gathering and centering just in that maybe 1 minute that you did that. Wow.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. It's like literally 1 minute and you can do it anywhere and it doesn't look like you're doing anything. You don't have to, do this. You don't have to like lift your arms out. Like there's all these with yoga, the breathing exercises, it can look quite physical, but this is something you can quietly do in the boardroom, quietly do in your office, on the way home. It's very user friendly.
That's a real gift, this Women's Day or Women's Month. Thank you. No, it really, I could feel it immediately. And
Oh.
so I'm going to use that. And I hope many of the people listening to this do as well. Thank you for spending this morning with us. Any last words on, what someone should do? Maybe, as we said, what you do on your wedding anniversary or I do on my birthday, inviting women to this Women's Day or this Women's Month, go get a medical exam. Anything else you think they should be doing?
Yeah, you know, all of these things are going to support your sense of well-being, right, on a regular basis. So while it all sounds boring, the fact is when you start doing it, you're actually going to feel happier and better about yourself and more able to tackle what's happening around you. Again, these sound like, platitudes, but it really genuinely does work and it's accessible to all of us. So, the potential impact is immeasurable on the way we experience our lives and therefore the way that people experience us. So it's going to impact our productivity. It's going to impact our relationship with our children, with our parents, with our husbands.
And we show up at work as well.
100% on the way that we show up at work. So it's worth thinking about, right? It's worth giving it that kind of thought. It isn't just a nice, it's not just a nice thing to have. It's something worth exploring because you only have one body and one mind. We can't exchange these. This is it. So looking after it is just a smart thing to do, and women are really smart. So I think they just need to wake up to this.
So do the smart thing this March. I like that. That's a great note to end on. Thank you, Sujata, and I hope you have a great month as well. And again, thank you for speaking with us. There were great insights and an absolutely fantastic exercise we can take away. So
Okay. Thank you for having me. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.